What's happening, Andy? Here, I'm joined today by Mike Holler of Visual Edge IT. How are you today, Mike? What's happening?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Same as always, out there trying to help folks with their technology as best we can.
Yeah, well, you are the guy for that, and it's Cybersecurity Month, and I really wanted to spend some time talking to some of the mega dealers out there about cybersecurity and what's happening in that area that's a growing part of the traditional office equipment dealer offering. So first off, let's get a little background. Tell us who's Visual Edge, and then a little bit about yourself and what you do for them.
Yeah. Well, Visual Edge is a national technology company focused on IT support, managed services, managed security services, as well as imaging. Copiers, printers, those kinds of things as well. We kind of handle the entire office. We try and look at everything that we can do to help a customer relates to technology, whether it be their desktop printer, full-on production equipment if they've got a print shop, handling their servers, their networks, their help desk support. Cybersecurity is a huge push. It has been in the last few years. So we have a special division with that works up our CISO package. And I'm sorry, my light just flickered in the office there, but so we kind of have a national footprint, and we have our own knock and sock, which is kind of unique in our industry. That's US based, so that we can handle the help desk calls as well as the security calls that come in.
So
My background, go
yeah,
ahead.
no, I was going to ask I was going to follow up and ask, tell us what you do for them.
So for right now, I was managing the managed services division in California. I put in for a transfer, and one of the beautiful things about Visual Edge is being a national company. We do have a large footprint across the country. I've got some family in Florida that I wanted to get out to and spend more time with, so I was able to transition to Florida. In that transition, I moved from managed services back to imaging with a focus on managed services to bring that talk track here. It doesn't have a huge footprint in the Orlando area where I'm currently at in Florida, so we're going to grow that and get that going. Before that, I started off as a copier rep in the late 90s, selling Xerox equipment for a dealer, an agent dealer, and moved my way up through the program. Specialist, a sales manager, branch manager, and then up into managed services with IT. So kind of done the full gamut of what we offer here at Visual Edge. So it's kind of cool that I'm bringing that kind of full spectrum out here to this office, which hasn't had a ton of that here in this particular area. They've been primarily a wide format centric place. So that's another area that we work with, is wide format as well. So looking forward to getting here and plugged in Orlando and see what we can do to help grow this market space.
It's funny to me to look at a Visual Edge and hear you talk about just how different the locations can be, right? Because if you think about it, these were all separate dealers that were acquired, and the location you're in, they were known for wide format. The location you came for, they were known for managed services. I interviewed Brian Ruiz the other day, and Brian's really he's a production guy, and some of your locations, production is king. So it's
Yeah.
interesting watching as you're sort of kind of pulling this all together and trying to get each branch up to speed with each facet of the organization. I still have my notes up from the Brian interview, so we'll plug away a little bit more. But you were being modest on your size. You guys are top five, certainly top 10, but I think one of the top five mega dealers in the U.S. You're in 29 states. You have over 70 locations, headquartered in, what is it, North Canton, Ohio, I believe.
Correct.
And so you've been a very active, very aggressive company when it comes to acquisitions. Excuse me, but pulling those separate companies together and under the Visual Edge umbrella, it's really been kind of cool to watch what you've done with bringing some of these other technologies. So you're bringing this managed services push essentially to Florida, to the Florida market from California. So what does that entail? I know it's let's focus a little bit now. It's cybersecurity month, right? You're there now for a couple months. I know Visual Edge just had a big event. I don't know if that was a national event or just unique to your market, but let's talk about what you're doing down there in Florida with cybersecurity month, and maybe talk about that big event that you guys just held.
Yeah, last week we held an event. It was a national event across the country for Visual Edge. It was called Terrifying Tech Tales. We bring in some of our experts and some guests to talk a little bit about what people should be looking for, how these instances can happen, and how to remediate them, how to prevent them if possible, putting together a strategy. a lot of what we try and do is educate our customer on having a strategy or a plan in place. A lot of folks think that, I have antivirus software, I'm good. My network guy has a firewall, we're good. But hackers in that industry are way more sophisticated than that with phishing schemes that they send out. And believe it or not, the employee training is a huge component of one of our recommendations. Still the human element, clicking on a link, opening an email that you shouldn't open, or getting a text that and responding to it that you shouldn't respond to. So educating our customer base on strategies to put in place is really instrumental in what we're trying to do. We're not just trying to go out and sell a product or a service. We're trying to educate and come alongside and partner with our clients and help be that other piece that they're missing. And so a lot of our clients, don't want to spend the money to go hire these unique individuals with these talents and skill sets, because they're, quite frankly, they're expensive. So if they can partner with somebody who has these experts that can rely on a service base, and it gets more cost effective for them to then go ahead and implement those things that they probably really, really need to and want to, but don't know how to do it. So we're out evangelizing through our vast network of sales folks from the imaging side, the wide format side, and managed services side, and just trying to get in front of customers and have business education discussions about how we can help, where some areas of opportunity are. And if we can help them, great. Sometimes it's just a matter of, yeah, you guys are doing everything great, keep it up, good work. So there's really no harm, no foul in talking with us and having a dialogue and see what we can do and find out where you're at.
So you one of the things I thought was really interesting that you just mentioned was, the education of the customers as being a major part of the program. And you think about that, right? And honestly, I look at the stuff that comes in my email. Like, I'm waiting on news articles to be sent from my clients and from anybody really. And, they've all got links in them, right? And then you're waiting for, you're waiting for an invoice to come in, or you're just anything that you're waiting for. And the spammers, or the spoofers, I guess, they're getting more clever. They're definitely starting to mimic, but, I'm smart enough to, before I click on something, look to see where it's really from, right? And then you start thinking about, well, I'm me, and I can't control. I'm in a small company. You guys deal with bigger companies, and keeping these people from clicking that link. I guess the basic instruction is don't ever click a link in an email, right? Go to the website and log in from the website if it's something, right? And that's just 101, but people don't think that. And sometimes, it's happened to me, right? You get something in your email, it looks perfect before you even think about what you're doing, you're clicking on that. And we've all had that happen at one point or another. And then you're off and going, right? You don't know what's going to happen. You've just maybe let ransomware into your place. You've maybe let malware into your network. So tell me a little bit more about this terrifying tales. Like, what is that event like? Is it horror stories? Are you educating people on this is what can happen, or what's the event like?
Yeah, it's a little bit like that. We do have some stories, some real life examples that we've come across. We have a few experts on our panel that come from the background of IT and cybersecurity, and we kind of give some real world examples of whether it be a customer that we have since picked up, or people that we've heard of, like you guys have, and we talked about how it impacted their business, how it impacted their finances. Believe it or not,
Oh yeah,
a lot of them are ransomware, so it's a financial thing. But we try and steer it more towards, look, these things are happening. It's not a matter of if, but when someone gets attacked in this world. So we want to try and give them some hope at the end of it. It's not all scary. We do try and scare you a little bit with just, these are realities, and it doesn't matter the size of the business. It can be a small 3 or 4 or 5 person office all the way up to, thousands of employees. I don't know if you heard recently the MGM attack.
I was just going to bring that up.
So the people couldn't get up and down elevators. They couldn't get in their rooms.
I was there. I was there. It was 3.5 hours to check in for some people. Fortunately, we were Toshiba had their event there at that time, and they were trying to pull people out of line that they recognized, and so they got a lot of dealers out into a quicker line that still took forever, but not 3.5 hours. I did hear a couple of vendors 3.5 hours just to check in. Fortunately, the elevators were working, but the whole time you're hearing this, that they got hacked, but also who got hacked was Caesars at the same time, and they handled it differently, right? So Caesars just paid the ransom, and it went away, and there was no problem at Caesars. These guys, it was just eerie. Their slots. I'm not I don't really play play the casinos, but when you walk into a casino and you're used to hearing that, and when you're walking to your room, and there's that dinging is not happening, and there's nobody in there, there's no smoke,
Right.
it's just empty, it's shut down because for some reason those are all somehow tied to the internet, I guess, and or to the network. And they had to shut. So they were losing something like, to your point, $4 million a day just in those casinos. And the poor people behind the desk. The irony of it all was you've got a convention of 1,000 managed service providers that are all checking in saying, I can fix it, right? But they probably got, they'll never know how they got hit. But it could have just as easily been some of these methods that you're talking about.
Right, exactly. And so those are the kind of scary tales we talk about. But then we also talk about things to do to help prevent that. What good practices are to put in place to kind of help as best you can. You're never going to stop it all, right? It's one of those things that it's inevitable. It's going to happen. But then also what plan you put in place to deal with it when it does happen. A remediation plan is really, really important. Who to call, what to do, how to do it, who are you going to rely on to get you that? Cybersecurity insurance is a huge thing. The insurance adjusters, like any other insurance adjusters out there, are looking out for the insurance company. So they're going to try and find a way to make sure they have to pay as little as possible.
Yes,
so having somebody who's vetted in cybersecurity and these types of processes can help identify where it came from and protect the companies to actually maximize their policy, benefits allowed that they're acquired, that they're able to get. So having people and knowing what to do once these things happen is really fundamental in setting up the first step. You got to have a plan. If you don't plan, you're going to fail, right? So.
Well, that can't be an easy conversation to have with a customer when you're trying to sell them on your, how good you are and your capability and how well you're going to protect them, and you're in the same conversation, the same breath, you're saying, look, if and when this happens, we do. But that's the most important part, right? It's not to look. You obviously want to try to protect them as much as possible, but the more people you have, the more the more possibilities of somebody messing up and letting something nefarious in, and off you go. So to have a plan B, what you're going to do, and to looking back on that way Caesars handled it versus MGM, and the people at Caesars were not affected, and we got warnings coming in. I mean, it was crazy. It was not the way Caesars. I mean, MGM would have liked to have handled that, I think, if they could do it again. And so to set that up, that's definitely a tough conversation to have, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And so when you're looking at this is so far beyond just securing the copier, right? Which is something Correct. You're obviously going to do. Do you have customers? Have you seen that happen where you've come in, you've taken over account, there's no security on equipment, these people are just they've got the equipment that has security, but it's just not set up, it's not
Correct.
How important is that for a customer as far as locking things down? Is that really a big deal?
Well, it is. It probably isn't as commonplace as what you hear in a lot of the attacks on the news that make the news, but you got to remember that multifunction devices from any manufacturer out there, that makes one, is essentially a computer. It has a hard drive, it has memory, it has a motherboard, it has an operating system, and it connects to your network. So it's a network appliance on your network. It has an access point, it's an IP address. So hackers can still get into it. The other thing is that a lot of folks, when they set these up, don't turn off like ports that they don't need or use, or they open it up to access for Wi-Fi. People can get in from outside the building, sitting in the parking lot, are able to hack in and try and get into some of these devices. Every piece of information you send to a printer to print is an electronic file that gets, ones and zeros, and then converted into that text that you see printed out is an image in the hard drive. It sits there. Like if you delete a file in your hard drive, it's not gone. It's just, you can't find it anymore, right? So hackers are able to go in and pull that stuff out of their hard drives. Same with the copier. So it sits there, resides. So most manufacturers that I'm aware of have an image overwrite protection option that you can go in and turn on and do periodically, or schedule them to do them frequently. Or when you replace the device, wipe that data out or pull the hard drive out, because that data is still there. Years ago, not Toshiba, but a company got hacked who was selling used machines at police departments, old copiers, and they got resold.
So that was Mars International. That was Mars International. I think that was on 60 Minutes, if I remember correctly.
Correct.
And they went in and they randomly found 3 machines, and one of them had police information on it from like you're talking about. I think one had healthcare information on it. And one had like something from maybe education. All 3 were like super critical, like, holy cow, this is, you can't turn your machine in with this information on there.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
it was kind of It was a really interesting moment for our industry because it sort of added a lot of credibility to stuff we had been telling customers for years, and customers just didn't care. And then all of a sudden,
Right.
you see it wasn't Stone Phillips, but you see somebody up there like him, right? And they're pulling the
Right.
machines out, and I'm thinking like, I know that warehouse, I know those guys. That's what Mars does. They collect all your used equipment from all the
Yeah.
dealers, from all these companies all over the country, and there's other companies like them, and then they sit in a big warehouse and they get shipped out somewhere else, to somewhere else. And if whatever's on there is on there, and it's not going away if
Hmm.
it's, once it leaves the customer's office. So, customers
Correct.
don't often know that they need to protect themselves and set that up. And so that's why, having a company like you guys, that's critical. So, back to your event, about how many people, and where did you hold it?
We did it virtually on the web,
Oh, cool.
and it was a web event. And geez, last count I know was well over 500
Oh
attendees.
my
So
gosh.
I'm not sure of the final count, but there was quite a few.
Yeah. Well, you guys make you are one of these companies that's out there pushing that, mantle of cybersecurity. And again, back to, your core, you started as mostly copier companies, and now that you've grown into this, monolith of just, essentially anything an office needs, right? You've
Correct.
or any company for the most part. If you need production, you've got it. If you need phones, you've got them. If you need,
Correct.
networking. And so your target for customers, when you're looking at customers, where do you guys tend to focus, especially for the managed services? Where's your sweet spot?
Oh, geez, sweet spot is probably anywhere between 25 and 100 employee, endpoints like computers, workstations is probably the sweet spot. We have the bulk of our customer base. Now we've got other customers who have several hundred accounts. We have some that have three. So we kind of fit the full gamut. We can kind of customize our services depending on what the client's needs are and the level they're at, and can grow with them. The cool thing about this service that we offer is it's expandable. So yes, we can handle the 5, 10, 20 user accounts, but we can handle some with several hundred accounts as well, or several hundred endpoints.
Well,
And we
it's the
have
kind of
the
thing, like
knowledge to do that.
you mentioned it earlier, right? A smaller customer doesn't typically have the budget to have an IT,
Mhm.
or the need to have an IT director or person running their
Correct.
IT. If you're 5, 10 people, you essentially have a bunch of people doing the day-to-day jobs, and they rely on outsourcing to companies like you for their office equipment. For it's just, you get to a point where, okay, I'm not setting up and running all the printers anymore. I just want somebody to call
Right.
when, I don't have the money to put this guy on staff, but when I can get a contract and just pay monthly fees on the computers, on the printers, on whatever it is that I'm using.
Yeah, and that's kind of the cool thing about it, because we can do it as a service, even include the hardware as a service. So we can help them out with that, because a lot of times the expenditure to update their infrastructure is prohibitive as well. New service, $15,000-$20,000 depending on what they want to do. New switches and firewalls can be several $1,000s, $5,000-$10,000 depending on what level they need for security. The other thing is that there's a lot of customers, believe it or not, even in smaller size wise, that have contracts with folks that require that, like government contracts, things like that. So maybe they're making a widget for somebody else who's putting this other thing together, for somebody else who's putting this thing together for a rocket ship. They all in that chain are subject to the standards that are required for cybersecurity and their security practices. So, it's coming downfield that they've got to either get their level up to where it's secure enough, or they're going to lose their contracts with these folks. So there's a financial impact to them. And a lot of times, like you said, they don't have the big budget to go out and spend for an IT person or spend on the infrastructure. So companies like us can come in and come alongside and help them and finance it and do it as a monthly cost. So it's easier on their pocketbook, and they're able to bring that stuff in. And they've got national support and all the experts they need, over 100 subject matter experts on our help desk. So depending on what software they're using and stuff like that, we can pretty much help them in any level. And they don't have to pay a fortune to go hire each of those individuals, to do that kind of stuff. So it is kind of a really unique value add to the customer in that sense.
Well, and it makes sense, as you grow, and when you started with Xerox and you were an agent, and I was an agent as well, by the way.
Mhm.
We were selling monochrome, maybe a little color if we got lucky, right? But it was really monochrome. It was mostly analog back then. And, it wasn't plugging in. It didn't do all these other things. There wasn't a need for a lot of this other security. And we're in such a different world right now. And kudos to you guys and a lot of companies in our industry that have grown into this area. This has been great. I appreciate you taking the time to sit down and to kind of just go over what you guys are doing. When I talked to some people at Visual Edge, you were the name that came up right at the top as someone that I would want to talk to about managed services. I'm going to be down at IT Nation. Is that a show you do? That's now that you live in Florida, that might be one for you to go to. Do you go to that?
I will definitely try and go. Now that I'm in Florida, I got to get used to all what's going on down here. But that sounds, if it's in Florida, then I'm driving there.
Yep. It's in Orlando. It's in November. We'll be there. It is quite a show for anybody watching this. Should who's in managed services or considering it. It's just we go to a lot of shows here, and maybe the big ones are 1,000 people, 1,200 people at a really big dealer conference, but you go to that thing and it's like 5,000 plus people. And first of all, we'll be the oldest ones there. So get your Chuck Taylors out and your backwards baseball hat. But, they're all young, they're all dressed, comfortably. And it's just, it's a fun environment. The booths are different. They're not, they're the marketing is different for this group. And it's just, there's a lot of energy there. I mean, I don't know what else to say. We've gone to it a few times over the years, and, it's interesting to see from the copier world, the printer world, starting to show up more and more. And we've seen like leasing companies. Great America was actually there showing, and we see CEO Juices there running around. A lot of companies are very familiar in our world, but they're starting to take notice. Sales Chain, I think, is another one that I'll see down there. All these companies that we're very familiar with that are all of a sudden taking notice of, wow, this is where things I think are going, and for a lot of you guys. So you're there. Yeah. You're one of the early adapters. You've gotten there. You've established yourselves. You've learned a lot, and this was really cool. Though I did want to talk to you during Cybersecurity Month, and especially about that event that you had, because that sounded fun. Maybe next year, we'll sit on that and take some notes. And I'm sure it was terrifying.
Yeah, for sure. I'll make sure that you get an invite.
Awesome. Well, good seeing you, Mike, and I will. I'll look for you down at IT Nation. Great talking to you, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.